What's up? How you doing? I am David Long. Thanks for joining us today. This is the third Integral Community Meeting. Today we're going to be talking about integral activism. And this is an exciting and fun topic. We got some wonderful people from the group with us here today. We'll probably go around and do just a quick round where we introduce ourselves and say hi. My name is... Some of the people know these other people from other group meetings and things, but we do have a new voice or two. So, hi, my name's David. I live in Fayetteville, Arkansas in the United States. I found my way to this group because I started it, and so that's why we're here. Kai, would you like to go next? Then maybe Josh, then Alexander, then Sal?
Hey everybody, I'm Kai, and I live in Fayetteville, Arkansas here in the US. I'm an artist, and I found my way to Integral through David Long. Yeah, that guy. Let me pass it off to you, Josh.
Hi, I'm Josh Simon. I live a little while outside of Philadelphia in the United States, and I've been involved with Integral probably close to 20 years. I got into it through my father, but at this point, up to this point, it's been a lot of reading, a lot of books, and practicing by myself. Good to have a community with other people that do this now. All right, next.
Hey everyone, I'm Alexander. I think I found this group through a friend of mine called Tangle, who's in David's group, who was sharing his disheartened feelings around Wilber's metaphysics, and yeah, I was kind of on the same page, and that's how I ended up in the group.
Hi, my name is Sabine, but you can call me Sal. I actually found this group by chance, like by accident, I guess, on YouTube. I was studying spiral dynamics, but then I found David on YouTube, and then I joined the community. I'm Palestinian, and I live now in Dubai, UAE.
Great. Well, it's wonderful to be hanging out with you all today, and I'm excited to get into the topic with you.
Round one.
I guess I'm just going to say a few of my thoughts about it up front, and then I'm going to pass it around, and then we can all put our thoughts on the table in the first round as just a basic, this is what I'm thinking about this topic, and then we can brainstorm a little bit more to go in another round where we talk about those things. And then eventually I would like to get to the point to where we can figure out some kind of hand-raising thing as opposed to just rounds, make it more like open discussion style. But I'll go ahead and go first, and I'll say that when I think about integral activism, I think that there is probably a type of activism to be had in every quadrant. You could be actively working on trying to refine your personal practice, your personal life in relation to what you've learned through study and critical analysis and ethics. Try to apply that stuff to yourself. You could even put in time working on that stuff. So there's personal stuff out in the world, getting involved and working within organizations to try and help their governance or to create new systems or something like this. And then there's like a very social aspect to engaging in activism. I guess I'm talking about activism in like the most broad term here. And then there's a type of activism in those four quadrants probably at every stage of development. So then every stage has their own way of engaging with activism. And then there's activism at the integral stage, and then like how an integralist would translate engagement with activism at every stage down the spiral. But I think it's really interesting in the context of our group, in the context of our time, to really think about those two things, integral activism. What does it mean to be an activist as an integralist within our community and within the world in these different levels of our life? What does it mean to be an activist with our family members, with our friends on personal stuff? What does it mean to be an activist in our city or our community at large? And then what does it mean to do our work to be an activist in our integral community? And probably we should be doing some kind of activism in all four quadrants in all of these different levels of our life. I mean, maybe activism is kind of like a way of framing it too. Like you could also think of it in the same way as a spiritual practice in all four quadrants in all these different elements of your life. So, I mean, I guess you could say that activism is kind of a lens through which you could frame the way that you would engage in all of these contexts. Like maybe that's just like a basic sort of framework to begin to parse out some of these different aspects of what we might be talking about when we're talking about integral activism. So maybe that could be helpful for us to be able to start to dig into some of the details of what kind of activism we like to do where and what we mean by activism. And then we can dig into the details a little bit more nuanced. But I'm very interested in specifically how this relates to this group and specifically how this relates to Integral 2.0 or some of the things that we participate in as a group. I think about like what's the ethics for the ways that we engage with the integral community around this project and what is skillful activism and engagement there. For example, we see all this stuff happening in Integral Global, posting lots of videos in there. So I think that's a type of activism, social engagement, challenging the community, right? And then how we act in the comments, what we say and what we don't say is a type of the ethics of our activism. And that's probably all I really want to say about it for now. That's probably enough to get it started. I don't want to blah, blah, blah too much, but I hope that's helpful as maybe somewhat of a framework for us to be able to talk about it deeper. Go ahead, Kai.
All right. I feel like if you're at these integral stages, you're here because you probably have some kind of a desire and a need to want to participate in larger projects and a larger picture. And just that in itself, even reaching this place, I think the activism really is in just the constant pursuit of refining your knowledge, understanding how to connect and communicate better with the people around us, and understand how to translate to people down the spiral, but also be able to offer transformational perspectives that can help them see the problem from your perspective. And so being like a spiral wizard seems like a form of activism that you can participate in. I'll leave it at that. Let me pass it to you, Josh.
Yeah, thanks. Okay, and I agree with everything that was said so far. I also would add that I think just the term activism itself is perhaps really, really broad. I would suggest, let me make a suggestion, that we limit the term activism for what can Integral 2.0 as a group, as a community do for activism. And then I would have some further suggestions if we do that. I think that we have now our, what you want to call them, tenets or our points of order, but we don't yet really, as I can recall, maybe I'm wrong, but maybe we don't yet have a vision statement or a mission. What is our mission? What is our vision? When we have that, we can then derive activism from that, because then everybody be playing the same game, working towards the same thing. I suggest, let me make some further suggestions, okay? There seems to be a theme generally going on with Integral 2.0 and beyond, where we want to talk to other people about Integral. Pretty basic. But who do we want to talk to about Integral, especially specifically Integral 2.0, okay? We might have to split it there, or pick one, or pick both, however we want to do that. Do we want to talk to the other Integral 1.0 people and make that a form of mission, vision? Or do we want to bring Integral 2.0 or Integral in general to the, translate, as Kai was saying, translate it to the non-integral first tier type idea people? And either one of them could be very good things to do. Again, I'm just suggesting them. I mean, if all of a sudden everyone decides they want to go out and block traffic for Black Lives Matter or something like that, that's a whole different animal. That's kind of my thing. So, I mean, if we start to pick one of those things, have a mission, have a vision, we get to move. And that's pretty much all I really have right now.
Yeah, I really appreciate what framing that's been done already. I'm trying to find a way to maybe share a little bit without getting too narrow a perspective of what activism is, but also sticking on topic with Integral 2.0 activism specifically. I appreciate what you said, Josh, about what would it be like to talk about activism within Integral 2.0, and the mission statement sounds like a really cool idea. For me, I think that one of the things that unites 2.0 is maybe what I shared in my intro, like a dissatisfaction with the metaphysics underpinning integral theory. And personally, I think that integral theory can exist just fine without metaphysics to a certain extent. But I also think that it's an important piece that people will continue coming back to and be like, oh, wait a minute, what's the underpinning thing here? So that's a discussion for another time. But I think the activism that I can see myself getting behind, even though maybe all the tenets aren't exactly 100% aligned with me, but mostly is okay, well, we need to strip it down back to the minus the assumptions of Wilber's metaphysics, and then build it back up with more rigorous rules and regulations or logical principles that I've been. I think that kind of activism in itself does, okay, this is what we're trying to do is a good place to start with activism in terms of sharing Integral 2.0 with other people. Like, it doesn't have to be, oh, I'm going to spread emergentism around, or I'm going to spread mathematical idealism around. It's just getting behind Integral 2.0 as a movement, and then taking it from there. Another thing that's coming up for me around activism in general, and maybe integral activism, is I've been interested in effective altruism, which is a movement where there's like a website that if you want to donate to charities, it's like a meta-analysis of all charities, and it's like, well, where's the money going and which ones are more effective? And that kind of meta-analysis, which I think, integral is a meta theory, so an integral activism would have meta-analyses to determine what effect and how effective actions are going to be. So I quite like that approach. I quite also think that, because I've been through this journey where, like, I watched the Zeitgeist movies when they were first released, and I got really excited, and I was kind of like, okay, the world's like totally screwed and we need to change it in all these different ways. And I ran to my partner at the time, and I was like trying to tell her about this documentary and get her to watch it. And she got so annoyed with me that she was actually like, I'm actually not going to watch this documentary just because of how annoying you are right now. And I guess that was unskillful activism at the time. And I've gone through this other stages that I've gone through where I'm like, oh, actually, this whole changing the world thing feels a little bit overwhelming. Maybe it's more about changing individuals, and I have to try and be better at talking to individuals and changing individuals. And I think that led me to therapy. I thought I'm a psychotherapist. And then I'm realizing, oh, actually, it's both. We need to change the systems, and we need to help individuals change as well. I think an integral activism would somehow cater for both of those, individual change and systems change, because essentially, just like therapy, if an individual gets therapy but then goes back into the same environment that caused all the problems, and that's really challenging for them to maintain their shifts. Yeah, I think that the way that I like to do that is through my creativity. So right now I'm working on a video game that I'm hoping will demonstrate the stages of development and to give people an experience of the different conflicts within those stages and the stage shifts and the rebellion against the previous stages. It's set in this sci-fi universe, so that we maybe get to this integral stage kind of super beings or like these alien creatures, and they're kind of like telling the character about how they've constructed the world. So there's this big experiment where all these different cultures exist, and then they can go, their job then from that point is to go back into the world as the spiral wizard and unite the human race through shared values and try and find how the conflicts are kind of arbitrary because it's the value systems that we can unite with, and some kind of integral religion, or integral religion's a bit of a dodgy word to use maybe, and some kind of integral thought that can lift everybody up, can be shared to unite people. And I think that's a kind of activism as well, the creativity, but also the thought of how can we bring people together where their ideas are accepted but they're not. And the whole poetry versus reality is kind of a point of contention in integral global at the moment, and a big part of the argument space. Anyway, those are just some thoughts I've got. I'll leave some more for the next round.
Okay, so the first two questions I would like to ask all of you is, what would an integral activism look like in terms of style? Because if you look at different stages, their activism sounds like different. So how would you imagine an integral activism look like, and what is the style, what is the strategy, what is the technique of that? Like, just a question for all of you. The second question is, what are the main topics you guys see in need for our activism? Because the way I see it is that we have two types of concerns in Integral 2.0, that we are concerned with being active with the other integral people who are not 2.0, and what can we do with the global concerns as well. So I guess what Josh actually said is very, very crucial. We need to gather ourselves, in one mission, one vision, so everyone is on the same page. Then we can actually talk about effective activism, because then we will not go so far, I guess. And that's because sometimes we first need an integral view of a particular case, in order to be active, to show activism about it, towards it. So the main concerns we should focus on, in my opinion, from what I saw, as people who are following Integral 2.0, is first of all educating people about it, the tenets that David established first, and also especially the racism thing, the idealism, the spirituality things. We need to have more debates, and that's actually, I think, a good activism style for an integral person. For global, I think that would be way far from now. We need to establish ourselves first of all in the community as integralists. Then we can go outside for the whole global concerns and issues. We can then show activism against racism. We can show activism by establishing some new systems of how to lead an integral government, or what would an integral education be like, or what an integral parenting would be like. These are my ideas. I really liked what Alexander said about the meta-analysis. I think all of what we are doing actually in activism should be about providing this meta-analysis, because a lot of people really need us to send them this meta-analysis concerning all these different issues and things that we are concerned about. Also, I liked his video game, and I want to ask him, how far do you see it similar to what we actually should do in reality? You kind of describe the storyline. How is that could be similar to the actual way we should spread the integral philosophy in life?
I guess with this project, my intention was that video games can reach a large audience, and that there could be 16 to 25-year-old people who would never think of traveling, or may never even experience or come close to reading anything about integral, and that just that fact itself would be activism, that it's a video game, therefore it's accessible via a completely different audience to anything that I have access to on my Facebook feed or anything like that. So that's a part of it. But I think the question was more about what maybe the intention or the characters' movements and what they experience. Is that something that we can embody and bring to the world? Is that your question? Yeah,
that's actually my question. Yeah,
I'd love that. I'm not exactly sure. I'd have to think about it more in terms of the plans that I have for this character and the game, and how it relates to my own life, for example. I had a conversation just yesterday with a housemate about integral theory, and he'd never heard of it, and he was really interested. He had lots of questions. So I think that's a great way of doing things, just having conversations. But I mean, in the video game, the character's moving through the world, and it's more about the character's experiences and shifts, as the character is a stand-in for the person playing. So the character is the person. So the person I'm communicating to is the player. Yes, I'm not entirely sure how I can answer that question exactly, but maybe you have your own answer as well. I'd like to hear that.
Actually, I think it's a genius way to really put people in the place of every person in the stage, because we can keep talking about how you should think, or how you should change your idea about this or that, but it's really, really great way to let them embody that and really experience it as a real experience without really waiting for the real life to put them in this situation so they can then realize it. It's super awesome. I'm really excited to see what will come out of this.
Thanks, Ian.
Same.
Round 2.
Hey, here's my idea about integral activism. Let's all go in different integral groups and we'll go live in there and we'll carry signs and we'll say, upgrade go 2.0, upgrade go 2.0, 2.0, 2.0, upgrade go 2.0. And we'll just do that for like in all the groups for hours, all of us in different videos. Imagine how much of an impact that would make, you guys. Okay, so yeah, obviously that's not my serious plan. Man, so much good stuff just came up in that round. Josh put out the proposition to specify and talk about activism in relation to 2.0 and to focus our conversation in that regard. And I'd be happy to do that. If everyone else is happy to do that, let's do the reactions with the thumbs up and we'll see. Okay, we got the claps, we got the thumbs up, we got the, all right, it's all good all around. Good, that's what we want to talk about. Nice. So mission statements, projects, outreach, issues with full agreement, education, upgrade, go 2.0. I really like this idea of the game. I thought of something similar, like how that could be cool to do as like a TV show with different seasons as different stages. Oh, I know, I'll write the integral version of like Plato's Republic. It's like, yeah, but who's that really going to reach? You know, actually making something like a game or a show or something that you can show somebody instead of just tell them, I think is a great idea. And yeah, that's generally a great way to go. The style, I like that question about style, Sal. It's a great question. I think that part of the leadership style in general is something like demonstrating the way, talking about it and then showing how to do it, something like that. And I think it's not just dancing in circles and carrying slogans and being obnoxious, but creating new systems that actually make the old system obsolete. Not asking for the like traditional activism style as if we were like trying to appeal to Ken Wilber or Integral Life to upgrade their map or something like that. Like, please include these factors. Like, please fix this. I don't think that's the thing. I think that we take responsibility. We do it ourselves. We figure out how to organize and get the things done that we want to get done. In terms of style, we have demonstrating the new way, not asking for permission, creating our own systems. And I think it's good to have like a playful type of seriousness, that authentic irony. Listen, we really care about this and we think it's important, but we're going to still present it in a fun and interesting way. And we're not going to be mad, angry, ridiculous, crazy, screaming jerks about it as sometimes we see activists looking like maniacs. We can be lighthearted and playful and also still serious about why this stuff is important. And I think take the high ground. I think it's really interesting. For example, a couple days ago, Joseph came out with this new video talking about 2.0 and endorsing it. Kai posted it in Integral Global and was like, look, there are serious, smart people who are taking these ideas seriously. Even people who are not fully on board with every single distinction still think it's an important and worthwhile project to get behind and consider, and made this completely reasonable post on Integral Global and shared this guy. And of course, the ridiculous people on that webpage came out of the woodwork and demonstrated just how ridiculous and non-integral they are as they claim to be spiral wizards and then go on to like insult people personally and tell them, you know, to go fuck themselves and stuff like this, you know, real skillful, but sure, integral communication. Honestly, that's a great type of activism. And this super skillful spiral wizard got blocked and might get kicked out of that group. You know, I mean, we won't kick out the racists, but if you're abusive and you're mean, then you could get blocked, not just put on timeout. Someone suggested that Corey do like strikes you out kind of a thing. Yeah, you know, that's good. That would be a step in the right direction, I think. So, I mean, even though it's not necessarily, it is outreach for 2.0, but it's also doing stuff. It's doing work in the community. You know, it's engaging. And Kai did it in a way with integrity. These people demonstrated our point about the problems in the community. We demonstrated our integrity and ability to take the high ground on this stuff. And it shows people in the community, like through demonstration, what is really up. You know what I mean? So, yeah, I think continuing to do things like that is a good thing. And it's an example of potentially the kind of style and the kind of knowing what you're getting yourself into and what to expect and allowing for that, and maybe even like sort of using it as like Aikido kind of, we'll take your energy and use it against you kind of a move or something like that. I know I'm not that much of a martial arts guy. Probably Josh knows better about the specific type of kung fu that might be. Anyways, I want to come back around to a couple of these points before I pass it on, because I have a little more to say. So in terms of like a mission statement and projects and stuff like that, like I'm still working on my long view book. I'm trying to get that out by the end of the year. That's going to be like big picture plan into the future. And basically it starts with all these different levels of unfolding of, you know, like I was saying before, not only activism within 4 quadrants within different stages, like you could see that already existing. My long view map is about stages of the unfolding of the movement. Right now we're in our core building stage. We're trying to get our foundations laid and find our core members, people who are really going to understand what the fundamental principles of what we're trying to do are. in this kind of core building stage, yeah, there's going to be certain things that we're trying to focus on. We're trying to build some basic structures. We're trying to find people who are going to be fully on our same page, find those people who are going to be the most on our same page as possible and get them to understand and value what we're doing. That's going to be really important. There are specific projects that come directly out of the points that I mentioned. For example, even saying that we're going to do debates and upgrade the map, we need to figure out a process by which to upgrade the map. The thing about the upgrading of the map and the debates is that it's not just, like, especially the debates are not just going to be regular debates. These are going to be integral style debates where we keep track of stuff. We know what the points are. We put it all on the table in an explicit way. And we use it as a chance to start to build together. Kai was using the example when we were talking about it of like our legal system and the way that like past legal things that have unfolded set down precedent for future things. It's like, well, we did this in the past, we established this, and you can go back and you can comment on things on the past or try to be critical of what's already been laid down. But if points have been shown to stand, if points have been shown to be undone, then it would be great to have that on the record and to be able to avoid that and be like, okay, no, I see here you're trying to make this case that's already been made and defeated. Unless you have a fresh perspective to add on that or something new, then we don't need to rehash that kind of stuff. So I'm thinking that this is a system and a way to plug these points into a larger database of points. Like this is a map of arguments that we need to build together, very much like Western Enlightenment style. So we need to figure out how to map those things. We need to figure out how to judge that stuff. There needs to be probably a group of official referees and judges around this kind of stuff to help organize and set this up. That's a project. For example, Bruce mentioned all of these people who have already brought things to the table of Integral. We need to figure out ways to start to figure out how we can process these proposed upgrades to test to see if they're real upgrades and figure out how to start to include them. So taking on these projects, these are some of the natural outgrowths that I see. Of course, there's going to be an integral movement in the future that's going to be much more concerned with getting involved in the world, and that's going to have to evolve and expand as we get into it. We're probably not really close to that, but the steps that I want to start to make in that direction are things like trying to get this Integral Hub webpage together that will come out with my Longview book, which will be a new platform for us to start to do some of this building and connecting together to bring together these databases. For example, Sal brought up this idea of integration, a questionnaire, and coming up with databases and stuff. So there needs to be a whole integration team. I don't know, Josh, if you have gone and joined the Integral 2.0 page yet, but I recently went live in there and I talked about some of the projects. And so I went through some of this stuff. But my point is there's a handful of projects. This web page, maybe getting something like an Integral News, the debate, the map team, basic upgrading groups and standards for that. We need WeSpace leadership groups, welcomers. We should organize content creation and generation around this stuff. I mean, that's one of the exciting things I've seen that I really like around this Integral 2.0 stuff. There's been tons of people making videos about this stuff already. I mean, at least more than around other Integral stuff. So that's exciting. But we could do fundraising, marketing, and promotional type stuff. There's a lot that we could do in that regard. And I really like this idea that you brought up, Josh, around inside outreach versus potentially how we as Integral 2.0 might want to think about trying to reach out to people. Because there's kind of this problem now of like, well, okay, if we're Integral 2.0, how do we deal with the 1.0 situation? Do we try to teach fresh as Integral 2.0, or do we acknowledge that there was a 1.0 and talk about differences? This is the difference between 2.0 as a way to put pressure on the community. Yeah, go ahead.
If you teach somebody organic chemistry, do you teach them all of the alchemy from the medieval era before you teach them organic chemistry? Or do you teach them organic chemistry, what we know? And I think that you teach them organic chemistry. I mean, having taken it, I know, so I don't think that you do that. So personally, I'm not really too interested. I don't have the time necessarily to get into the database stuff and all that. And I really don't want to, I'm really not interested in the philosophical debate stuff because I just can't really do it. So I'm not really too keen on that. I accept it if that's Integral 2.0's mission and they want to have philosophical debates as their primary activity. That's great. I wish you all Godspeed and blessing or whatever you want to call it, and that's good. But I personally, the part when you talk about reaching out to people outside of Integral and teaching them about Integral, that's where I think I have some ability to contribute, because I mean, I make a lot of money just in general by doing one really simple thing, by taking a complicated subjects, really complicated subjects that people cannot understand, and explaining it to people who don't have any background. That's what I do. That's like, if there's anything that I do, if everybody's got a superpower, my superpower is doing that, taking really, really complex things and explaining them to people who have no background. I suck at being in that really complicated area and just really doing all the complicated stuff with the complicated people. I'm inferior in that regard. But when it comes to talking to people who don't know anything about it, I'm good at that. I definitely think that if there was a component to it where there were podcasts or there were web pages, I mean, think about like Integral Evolver.
Jeff Salzman or whatever. Integral, it's Daily Evolver. Integral Evolver was the, yeah.
Daily Evolver, right? I mean, like, okay, so forget about the content for a second and look at his technique. He's good in that regard. He does something well. Whatever you think of it, he does it well. That kind of thing could be a good thing to follow, a good technique to use, among others. But that's kind of where I feel my ability to contribute and my strengths would lie. So, okay, I'm done.
I'm just going to briefly respond and then finish up and pass it on. Yeah, there's a lot more to talk about. I guess I see 2.0 as more of a within the community style way of trying to put pressures. I mean, I do think that we should think about creating new versions of ways to integrate people into the community, to create new intro material and all this kind of stuff. And yeah, podcasts and stuff would be good. I think that's what I was saying. I think I briefly mentioned something about content creation and generation. Everybody, I think the good thing about this kind of movement is that everybody's got their own style, their own things that they can contribute, their own places where they're passionate. And that's great because not everybody can do everything. And so we need people who are like, look, I don't care about that. I want to focus on this, and hopefully there's enough people who do that in different areas to where we can start to get some good coverage. It's like, well, what can I do? So I think that's good. And Josh, I'm sure you have good ideas about ways to translate this stuff down the spiral. And maybe you can figure out a way, not just to do that, but maybe a way to tell us and about how you would do that and make some kind of a presentation about how to simplify some of this stuff or something like that, or ways that you simplify. But then maybe you can also figure out a way to take your simplifying skills and see if you can communicate to some of these 1.0ers about what is so good about 2.0. One really important point is going back to this idea about full agreement. Okay, even if you don't really know where you stand on idealism or emergentism or any of that, if you care about what's true and you care about intellectual honesty and having to prove it, it doesn't really matter. Because if we create some kind of a good process together like that to be able to try to honestly figure out what's true, we can trust that. And if you really have good points on your side, you'll win. Oh yeah, I'll probably pass it off. One last thing is talking about simplifying ways to talk about these points. Maybe Josh's ability to find really good ways to communicate these things simply to people. Maybe there's a way, like what Sal was saying, where we could kind of focus on a particular point and then do things around that point to show why it matters as a way of demonstrating and getting people to potentially value what we're doing through focusing on the distinctions around these points and why they matter to the community. Okay, so I think I've said enough. I've talked a lot. I'm going to pass it to Kai.
Going back to what Sal was bringing up about style, every single one of us is different. And like what Dave was saying, you all have something unique to offer. How you present that, how you embody can really have a big impact on how people can even understand the information. I really loved what Alexander was bringing up about that game. My own experience growing up, that's what I had as a kid. I learned systems thinking through strategy in games, and I learned how to think on my feet, and I learned how to take action. Creating a game that takes you through the various stages of the spiral and leading the character through this growth hierarchy, that's amazing to me. If I could have played a highly engaging video game that brought me through all of these different stages, keep making that. I want to see that game. In terms of like what we can do right now, when it comes to like Integral 2.0, I think it really does come down to the individual making a decision about what it is they're good at and then just taking action on it. All right, nobody's doing this right now. I'm going to fill that role. Even just a little bit of time into something is huge. Any amount of content built around it just builds the interconnectivity of people, because the more people can see that there are people who are taking action, who are creating and think that this movement means something, which it does, the more they'll want to engage, the more they'll want to be a part of it and participate and take it seriously. Video, definitely probably one of the best ways to go about it. Obviously, podcasts are great too.
Making these memes is great too.
Yeah.
Seeing people make the memes.
Yeah, the memes, for sure. Making it fun is, I think, one of the most important things.
I just got to say real quick, the memes are a good point where they're funny. If you're in the in-group, they're funny. Show a meme to like my grandmother. I have no idea what the hell it's talking. But I mean, are we going to make memes that someone in the in-group thinks are funny? Or are we going to make memes that my grandmother thinks are funny, but make her think? Or both? That's an important question when it comes to that.
Well, both. I don't know. Do we need to get your grandma involved in this, Josh? What's your grandma like? Tell us about her.
I mean, she's probably like perfectly like level average layman.
Like layman. That's impressive.
Oh no, I mean she's not that impressive, but like she's a typical regular person walking around the streets of the United States today. So I mean.
Well, I think your grandma sounds like super cool, and if we don't get her on board, I don't know if we're going to be able to continue on with this project.
I'll let her know.
Okay, we'll let her know. We have to do that outreach.
The stepping into it, creating and demonstrating, I think is a fantastic way to inspire people that may not feel more to engage and create content and speak your mind. That's kind of the whole point, is we want to be able to bring up where we're at, talk about them, and be challenged, and then be shown like, where you're getting it right and things like that. So let me pass it to you, Alexander.
I'm enjoying this conversation around style, and I feel like because David's been the main mover and expressor of Integral 2.0, people kind of assume that he is Integral 2.0, or like as a leader, style that David brings is like the style of 2.0. And I'm enjoying the idea of if someone has like a completely different style, even though you're kind of joking with the integral 2.0 cheerleading style. Like that is a style, right? And that's someone might have that like more excitable, more, maybe they don't get into the philosophy or the, you know, metaphysics and stuff, but they can express it in a particular way that is accessible to a different crowd. I think that's an important thing to consider. Is like, okay, well, yeah, are we trying to talk to Josh's nan, or trying to talk to integral 1.0 people? Or I think every time we create something, that's a nice thing to have in the back of our minds. Like, all right, well, who's our target audience? That seems to work for business, so it should probably work for us as well. Personally, I feel like I quite like mixing up the styles. Like, there's a part of me that thinks maybe that if there's only kind of like one or two people really promoting it, then the style isn't as accessible than if there's a bunch of different people expressing it, and it could be in their own, like I said, in their own way. But then I guess the risk there is that someone who's really into, let's say, David's style, but then like really gets put off by the cheerleader style, kind of maybe assumes that, oh, Integral 2.0 is full of these people who are kind of like having this energy and expression. So there's a tricky thing where it's like, okay, well, it's good to have a style, it's good to have like a look or a brand, but it's also good to be diverse and accessible. And I guess Integral as a system itself is kind of like the ultimate in accessibility, because it's supposed to reach out to everybody. But in that as well, maybe we lose a little bit of focus if we try and do that in our expression. So yeah, those are some of my thoughts around style. I think in terms of my personal interests in contribution, I've sort of started that, and I felt quite good about just getting on with it. Like I feel like it's nice to feel that in this new Integral 2.0 space, we're co-creating it, and that I can just interject what I'm interested in bringing into the group, and I don't have to wait or like ask for permission. And I think maybe, David, that's part of like stepping up into leadership roles as well. It's like, right, you just want people to get on with it, take the initiative, and actually just do stuff. So I'm quite enjoying that. I feel like I've got the freedom and space to do that.
Not only would I want you to do that, I would want you to potentially, if you can, or if you should, or if it's part of it, to take the initiative to invite other people to join you and get involved and stuff like that as well. Like to take up a leadership role and like, hey, I'm doing this. Who wants to help? Who wants to come with me? You know?
Yeah. I feel like I have limited time, but I'm excited. So the excitement, I think the momentum of 2.0 sort of being officially announced, and the momentum that's behind it right now is exciting to me and makes me want to contribute more. I think it's another thing we can ride the back of as well. It's kind of like, oh, it's the buzz right now. And it's kind of, oh, it's a new thing. And it's good time to seize the opportunities and the excitement around it. I think that's all that's coming up for me right now. I think I had more to say, but I'll jump in later in another round if I need to.
Okay, I think first thing I want to comment on is the style. I really agree with Alexander about trying to use more varied types of styles and not really stick to one or even two, because we're trying to be reaching everybody, and but I think also we have to rank these styles from what is more effective to our current needs. Maybe memes are not really effective. Maybe it is effective. I don't know. We need to discuss more about this. Also, as a personal opinion, I think it should be always fun when it comes to the content that we publish. And it should be more about show, not tell, kind of like content. But we also do the opposite thing when we do more debating with whoever wants to debate with us, mostly about people who are coming from Integral 1.0. Maybe then we can debate more in the debating, which will be more tell, don't show kind of thing, and not really fun, but more of like serious and on point. So maybe we can use these two type of styles as a start. The first one reaching almost anybody, and the second one kind of establish who we are, what we really think, getting to the serious details of what is the mission and the vision, and what's actually different than the other Integralists 1.0. Basically, we need to stop also taking permission. That's actually one great point. I don't understand why we should take permission from 1.0. I think Bruce was talking about you cannot call this update. I was like, okay, what's your standard of what we can call updates for this model? I think it is an update if we really think there's something new, there's a different way of approaching this tool. It is an update. Even if it's just different in how we deal with it, it's still an update, a theoretical update. So yeah, I don't think we should take permission since we're sticking with the model. I also think we should, as I said, state the mission and vision as Josh expressed as soon as possible, without really having to wait for David's book, because it will take a whole year. I don't really think that's gonna work. We need to work in the buzz right now, because he said it will take 1 year. We should start publishing things on the group, really stating the mission, the mission and vision, and put it out.
Yeah, I think you're right, Sal. I said by the end of the year. But I agree.
What did I say? I said that.
You said that it would take a year, and it's August.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
So but I think you're right, months. Though. There's energy now, so we need to do something now. So I think you're right about that.
Yeah. So even months from until the end of the year, that's also still a big period of time to wait for that, because we need this solid ground under us, and we should not really wait for the book. Here's the other point I want to talk about is how we deal with Integral 1.0, like how we approach them. What is the relationship we should have with them? How we can deal with them. From my opinion, I think we should not concern that much with Integral 1.0 in that, we should take permission, or we show because if we do this, if we keep approaching them, reaching out for them, always we are the people who ask for debates, it seems like we're establishing ourselves as more of an opposite team to them, and I don't think that's a great way to start. We should not be the people who nitpicking them, or go and reach them, call, or try to calling them to see us or something. I think that should not be the thing, because the people outside will really think that we don't have anything, and maybe we are just an opposite team for them or something, while that's not the case we want it to be. It could be for now, it might be feeling that we are opposite to each other, but actually our bigger vision is that we will unite under one united standard. So we should not start from this point, like we're just separating ourselves or something, because after all, we're not. We're just trying to go, actually evolving this too, not separating ourselves from it. I think, I'm not really sure, but maybe we should leave it to those who will naturally attract us, because as I see from the Integral 1.0, a lot of people just by themselves, they leave. Or they don't want to associate themselves with it anymore. So maybe we can be the other version, other option they can go to without really trying to show off ourselves a lot. I don't think we need to do this. For now, I think it already attracts enough people as a start. We have established a good point on why we should exist, and a lot of people realizing the issues in Integral 1.0, and I think maybe things will start to grow for us slowly. To summarize what I'm trying to say is that I think for main points, I think we should decide, first of all, our style on activism and our style in content. As I said, we should be more fun in content and more show, not tell. When it comes to debates, we should be more happening internally. It should be more about telling, not show, and be more serious. Number two, we should decide our core values like mission and vision, as I just said, as well as the target audience, as Alexander said. And for three, I think we should decide our relationship and how to deal with or interact with Integral 1.0.
Can I say something? Sal talking about unity and all the other, how it flies with the mission and the vision. Can I share? Do you guys mind if I share my screen?
Yes, please do. Yeah.
All right. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. I can't believe I'm going to do this, but this is pulled right out of basically what I do in real life. So I'm going to show you how we are unified and how all this is going to tie together. Okay. So we have the tenets up top. Okay. We all kind of know what they are. We all kind of agree what they are. The tenets guide the mission and the vision statement, right? So the mission and the vision statement are guided by the tenets, and then what we're gonna do is there's going to be a layer below the tenets. We're going to have some, I don't know a better word for it, I'm just going to call it policies. This is where we say, okay, we're going to have a lot of different ways in which we fill the mission. We're going to do podcasts, we're going to do video games, we're going to do memes, we're going to do that. That's how all that, we're going to do all that. So it's going to talk about the different divisions. This is the division that talks to 2.0. This is the division that talks to 1.0. This is the division that talks to my grandmother. All right, and then the policies are going to guide the activities.
Can I get you to make these fonts a little bit bigger?
All right, and then what happens is the activities create what we'll call records. These are your videos, your video games, your memes. Okay, so what it is it's a
nested quadratic.
It's a pyramid.
Okay, there you go.
Okay. There are, of course, a lot more records than there are activities. There are a lot more activities than there are policies, and there's only one mission, vision statement, and a few tenets. You see that? But we are all unified because we may like different activities that are specified in our policies, but we're all going to be doing something that's moving towards the same mission, vision, and the same tenets.
Right.
All right, so I can't believe I did that. I just documented a basic quality system for you, but
Josh's hierarchy of qualities.
that's the idea. And anyway, with that, I got to bail, unfortunately, but thank you guys.
Thanks for hanging out, Josh. Have a wonderful evening, buddy.
Good talking to you, man.
Yeah, cheers, Josh. Good to
All
know.
right, take care.
Round 3.
Okay, Sal, your summarized points. Can you run through them again real quick, just briefly? You're like boom, boom, boom.
Okay. First, we have 3 points. The first is decide style, then decide core values, mission, vision, and third is to decide our relationship to Integral 1.0.
I think it's very interesting what you were saying about the relationship to 1.0. Thinking about how much time and effort we want to actually spend trying to get these people on our side, and whether really what we need to be doing is just doing our stuff, like doing the Integral 2.0 stuff, which is like the obvious, like what I was saying before about demonstrating the way, creating new systems, and like you're saying, being playful yet serious. I think that's right on point. I think right now, like you're saying, in this very moment, when we have a little bit of tension and we're first pushing off of 1.0, it makes a little bit more sense, perhaps, to be like, this is where we stand, this is why we're breaking away. But then, once we're broken away and we have a little bit of people, it's going to be, look, this is what we're doing. Like this, now we're doing doing shit. Like, look, we're over here doing shit. Like, we're actually doing shit. That is actually going to be a lot more convincing to people who are going to really want to be on our side anyways, is the shit that we do, not just that we said something. So yeah, I think that's right. I think the show don't tell is a good way to go. I really like that. And then when we debate, then it's in that space, in that context. It's a lot more serious and rigorous, and it's tell in a very serious way, a little less playful. And I think it would be interesting and important for us to consciously expand our idea of who our target audience is. In the new way that we're going with this stuff, the Zeitgeist movement people, these are our audience. We want to do outreach to them. The Game B people, Hansi's group, and in general, like some of the dark web type people. And we need to, figure out some kind of ways to make content for them or make things that are accessible to them. And it is interesting to figure out the dynamic of how you frame it. Because like when Josh said, like, well, when you teach chemistry, do you start by teaching alchemy? It's like, well, no, not in that context. If you're teaching philosophy or psychology or any of these types of subjects that we're actually talking about, then yeah, you kind of do start with divine command theory, and then let's knock that down. Here's consequentialism, and then let's show the problems with that. So it's like there is kind of an unfolding. I mean, I don't necessarily think that we don't need to teach Integral 1.0 and then try to teach Integral 2.0 on its back. But I do think we need to be like, okay, I'm a part of Integral 2.0. We think this, this, and this. It is a 2.0. 1.0 disagrees on this point, this point, this point. They think this, and this is why this is where we part ways with them, and this is why. So maybe that kind of a thing is a good thing to have. After I get out this webpage and this long view book, my main project then is going to be to create a intro lecture series. And yeah, it'll be from this 2.0 perspective, and we'll offer certifications on the back end of that. People will be officially integrally informed. We'll have an official type of orthodoxy. It's interesting because in one hand, people like Frank Vister and Joseph have equated what I'm trying to do here with Lutheranism. Martin Luther stealing the fire from the orthodoxy and being like, we the people can look at this stuff and translate it for ourselves. And people should be able to deal with this themselves. In a sense, it's a democratization, but in a sense, it's also very much like a scientific kind of new orthodoxy. Anybody can engage and anybody can potentially upgrade the map, but there's still an official process through which to do that. As much as it is democratizing, it's also about trying to create an orthodoxy. It's a little bit paradoxical in that sense, but at least it's like a democratic type of orthodoxy, I guess, that we create together. It's not just like, and David said, there shall be emergentism. I went to the top of the mountain and it was revealed to me, emergentism, Integral 2.0, and so it shall be. I think expanding our target audience, knowing what our style is, and figuring out how we relate to Integral 1.0. What was the other thing you said, Sal? I think that's only two of them. Did I miss something?
I think we must just about the style, different ways we can do activism and the content.
I think that's just some stuff that we're going to have to work out. Like really right now, I only have really vague things to say about that. Like what you were saying about demonstrating and this idea of creating new systems and the playfully serious thing.
I think all of these points need another whole community and a whole community just to decide together how we should approach Integral 1.0. Another for how to actually decide the type of content and actually sift projects for this and assign people to these type of contents. Who would like to be somebody who's doing videos, somebody who's like doing debates. It should be like more clear about this.
Well, I'm hoping that we can start to get some of this stuff organized in the 2.0 group. I really want that to be the space in which we make more of our like organization project type space. So maybe that's the kind of stuff that maybe what we would do is, since we have bi-weekly meetings here in the I Am David Long Friends and Fans group, we can also have on the other weeks bi-weekly 2.0 meetings. And then within that context, we can discuss what our 2.0 ideas and policies are specifically. So maybe that'd be good for that space is what I'm saying.
I've got a couple of things I'd love to add. It's just around, I guess, the difference between what seems to be more common with the 2.0 movement so far is this debate style, like, this idealism is terrible and I can show why, and you've got to prove why it isn't. And there's like an important realm there of refining metaphysics. But I think as well, what would be nice to see is more collaborative and co-creative and generative discussions. So it's like, what are we creating? It's not just knocking other people's ideas down, but maybe like a podcast, more of a podcast style where it's two people who have things to share around a topic, and that becomes another style of sharing for the group. Because if there's too much just debate style, then it kind of feels a bit combative in a way. So yes, just in terms of style, it could be nice to add.
The other thing I would really like to see us work on that I mentioned is integral news. Having this project of creating like a fun sort of like news show, but it's like integral related, talking about the stuff that's happening in our community and potentially an integral perspective on stuff in the world. And part of the main problem, I think, with having an integral group is that it can often be like herding cats. Everybody's like, look, I got this thing that I do. This is my thing. I'm doing this over here. And maybe I can contribute this, but I'm also busy. Integralists are busy and doing stuff already and already have projects. And so when you reach out to them like, hey, let's get this project going, a lot of times they're like, yeah, I'm really working on my project and I'm really busy with that. So I don't think I'll have a lot of time. So, I mean, I think we still run into some of the same problems with time and a focus on the individual in some of these spaces. When I think Integral 2.0, I think that this is a birth of Turquoise. This is the birth of actually an integrally informed community and system starting to come online. So that means we should see more and more people who are willing to lend their individual skills, and more people who are willing to come together and work together, and maybe even a better ability to plug people in and network people into potential groups that could work together on stuff. If we can actually get some stuff going, people will take the opportunity to get involved more seriously. Like, for example, I reached out to several people about trying to do this integral news because I play a particular kind of part in the community. People perceive me at least as a more like combative kind of person. I was actually talking to Stephanie Lepp. I think she would have been a really good person to do it. And I've reached out to a few people. And I think it'd be a great opportunity to have something like that. Like, it could be really cool, and it would be amazing to get to do that. It's going to be, I think, a little bit hard in the beginning to get people excited to get the thing going. But ultimately, I think once we get the ball going a little bit, we'll probably have more people than we know what to do with. I think that's like kind of the problem with these kinds of projects, right? It's like, and that's why what we really probably need to be doing at this stage is like really laying the groundwork, getting the structure, getting our stuff together. So that way, when we do start getting more attention and getting more people, that we have an ability to actually integrate them skillfully and do something with that influx. This is the problem with the Zeitgeist movement. They got a bunch of people excited, but then they had nothing for them to do, no way to plug them in. So it's just like this huge movement grew up around this cathartic art piece that was made, this film, and they put the cart before the horse. They put the propaganda out there before, he wasn't planning on it becoming a movement like that, I guess, but we need to learn from that, get our stuff together. And then by the time we put out our propaganda, it's like we already have systems in place to be able to integrate you and plug you in. So right now, honestly, I think we do need to reach out to 1.0 and find the people who are maybe not the real like actual 1.0, but people who are like in the integral community, I guess is what I'm saying. We need to reach out to the people who are going to be sympathetic to us already. We got to find those people. We need to make those people know about what we're doing and maybe expand to this smaller target audience. But I think for now, we need to keep our circle small, our focus tight to get our stuff together. And that'll be a good phase one. So that way, when we push off, when we have like a book about how we're going to do a revolutionary movement and we have a web page, and this is also where I think maybe Josh misunderstood what Sal was saying about us being a unity. I think Sal understands the reason I'm challenging the integral community is because ultimately we're making the integral movement and we're going to be in charge of that. So this is integral. So in that regard, we are still a unity. 2.0 is still integral. And so what we're making is still going to be underneath that banner and still going to be flying that flag. And so even though we're putting pressure on the community, that we're still going to include all of them. Because after we build these structures and we get these standards and these things in place, because we have this system of discrimination and integration, then we can actually open up our borders a little bit more to allow the larger community to then participate in our processes and our things. And it's not going to be the case that everyone has to understand. Everyone has to understand what we're doing right now. So that way together we can build the core systems. And that's why we're looking for those people to get that original healthy core, that group of leaders who understands the basics of the most important fundamental principles that can create the container that will allow for disagreement to be dealt with skillfully. And then once we get some of those systems in place, then we can really push into out in the world outreach and like getting involved. And hopefully by then COVID will be kind of over and we'll be able to do some more real world stuff anyways, But yeah, now's a great time for us to really focus on getting our stuff together and getting organized, doing that hard systematic work that probably isn't always so fun and exciting and romantic, but hopefully us core leaders care enough about it to sacrifice to do that. So that way it like helps this bigger picture and we can all do the things we want to do. This is like open conversation now. Just go ahead and chime in whenever you guys want.
I had something to add just in terms of the image of the Integral 2.0. I feel like perhaps the Integral 1.0 people and people who are kind of based in that idealism, metaphysics, fear losing something by dropping that. And what are those things that they fear losing, and how can Integral 2.0 demonstrate that they're not actually going to lose that thing necessarily? Right. It's just like a shift in ontology or something.
That is a great point.
Yeah.
And it might be like for me, I actually came into Integral most strongly when I got into Integral life practice. And I think that demonstrating that we still have that in Integral 2.0 might be a good thing. And what does that look like? And how do we, rescue the baby out of the bathwater? We can keep symbols, recognizing that they're symbols and still use them in the same way, recognizing the benefits we get from them, but not creating a kind of literal foundation that they're based in.
Yeah, maybe making some content about some kind of a content generator kind of thing where we ask people what they would be afraid of losing or what they would be afraid of, something like what their concerns are, and then we could systematically go through and deal with these concerns in some kind of content or generate content about these concerns. Yeah. And I think that's great. I think that's a fantastic suggestion.
Yeah, being able to like make some kind of a meta narrative around that core issue, because I think that is a real issue. Like I know before I started to really get into integral, I definitely had a bunch of woo ideas that they're still there, but I understand where they exist within and where you can't make claims about certain things when you take the quadrants into account and things like that. Like I don't think it's really taking anything away from anyone. I think it's just refining the way that we interact with and interpret the map for more practical ways of using it. These spiritual things, those are personal, and that's something that shouldn't be thought, oh, well, since we're only trying to think of it in scientific terms or something, or evidential terms, that it discredits the spiritual side of things. If that's your practice, that's your personal experience with the mystery that it is to be human. That's not something we want to take away from you.
We just want to help you understand understand it better.
Right.
Yeah, and we can demonstrate that somehow that's possible.
That's why I also wanted to have a debate with Frank Visser, right? I've like challenged him to a debate several times around the like pre-trans fallacy #1 to be like you keep wanting to say this is a secular thing or that I'm a scientist or something like that. I'm like, so not a scientist. I think anybody who really knows me knows that I'm definitely not a scientist. I like science. I'm just an artist. It's not my area of expertise. But yeah, I think it would be good to do something like that just to demonstrate, look, I'm not this straw man and I actually really care about and value religion and spirituality. That's why most of my content is about that. If you think that this is an anti-religious movement or an anti-spiritual movement, then you're completely mischaracterizing it and misunderstanding what it's about, because actually just trying to be an integral version of spirituality and religion and trying to do that right. And I highly value those things. That's why I'm in this community, is because I got there through that stuff. Not because of science. Like I care about storytelling and meaning and things like that. Of course, I want that stuff to cash out in accord with truth and rationality, but I think the greater good and having a good meaning and having a good purpose is probably more important than just knowing facts and being in line with facts. Is there anything else we want to get into before we go? Sal, do you have some kind of final pearls of wisdom to bestow on us?
No, I don't have any pearls of wisdom for now, maybe later.
I've always got thoughts. But again, I feel like the 2.0 movement is being explicit, refining the metaphysics because it's being corrupted, like intervals being corrupted and the stages have been added that are basically just Advaita adds on top. And I think that people, and this is a bit of an assumption, but I assume that people cling to idealism because it allows that to be true, like those enlightenment stages to be true. And I think rather than just, or as well as cutting that out, something else can replace it that could be more psychologically based. For example, it's a developmental model, so we know that all human beings have the potential to develop themselves in all these different ways. And like, sure, is that enough? Could enlighten? I mean, if you have to have some kind of goal or like potential, is the psychological line development, is that enough? And if it's not, then what are the individuals looking for that is more than that? So for example, if they're looking for like a higher self or soul, and it's like, oh, I want to be guided by my soul, how can we reframe that and include it in some way, base it in psychology or base it in, I know there's work by Stanislav Grof around spiritual emergence, and maybe there's something that we can unpack around archetypes in our minds and in the psyche that blah, 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 like I won't go into that now, but
yeah, reframing these spiritual terms that people use in something that does cash out with these kind of ways of thinking. I mean, when I think about like myself and like my spiritual relevance in my own life, I think about the emergence of this entire universe and the fact that I'm even experiencing this. I have subjectivity. It's fucking amazing. That to me is a spiritual experience. It's not just this interior thing that holds all the keys to your spiritual experience. I mean, having this physical relationship that you have with reality. And I don't think people give it enough respect in their practice. They want it to be something extra. Sometimes it really is. It's amazing to even be alive, and that this could very well be the last time you might be. It's a spiritual experience.
I feel like this is something I've tried to kind of do a lot already. Like in my soul self-awakening ghosts afterlife reincarnation video, I've gone in and tried to rescue the baby from this dirty bathwater. In my video, the first one I did on the integral stage about sacred naturalism, I talk about the pros and cons of different religious traditions and the value of sacred naturalist kind of approach. I can always do more on this stuff, and these are like my main topics. But I think you're right. I think maybe making something specifically about saving the spiritual integral baby from that dirty 1.0 bathwater is a potentially good video to make too. Oh man, there's so many videos to make, not enough time. I need like a team of editors. It's ridiculous. Let's do a quick round where we all say goodbye. Kai, you want to do that first?
It is a pleasure to be able to be up here and talk about these issues around integral. We're happy that we're having these discussions. It's fantastic that we get to connect.
Yeah, likewise, I really happy to be here. I'm glad that we're doing this. I'm excited to be part of the movement, and goodbye.
Really glad that we have this community and being part of this movement, and I really had every moment of this meeting. And that's all.
Thanks to everybody for hanging out. 2.0. Make sure you check out the past meetings as well. The other one should be posted pretty soon. It's uploading currently. Thanks for watching. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe. Support me on Patreon if you're not already. And join our I Am David Long Friends and Fans Facebook group. Thanks for hanging out. Peace.